Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I am so excited for today's guest. Only one guest today. She is the head of school and founder of Statheros Academy, which is an umbrella school, which we're going to talk about what that is. She also hosts the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, which is fabulous. And I'll put that link in the show notes also for Statheros Academy so that y'all can reach her if you want to get a hold of her. Her name is Colleen Prayne, and she has 3 teenage boys, of whom one just graduated. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so, Colleen, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to talk with you.
So, well, let's get started with how long have you been homeschooling? So first I want to talk about what made you decide to start homeschooling, and then what led you to starting an umbrella school and what that looks like. So Let's start with your backstory, your origin story.
My homeschool origin story. Well, my origin story is when I was, in public school and I was little, I begged my mom, please homeschool me. I don't want to go to school every day. There's this thing called homeschooling and it sounds amazing. And she wouldn't have anything to do with it. So I wanted to start homeschooling probably when my oldest son was looking like at preschool, and my husband was not on board, and he just wouldn't have anything to do with it. Homeschoolers are weird. They act funny. They talk funny. They look funny. No, they need to be in school. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to wait. So I kind of let it go, and then it just wouldn't leave. And then I put my oldest, he was in kindergarten in a private school. It was a private Catholic school, and the school was great. I mean, it was fine. They did very rigorous academics, and he worked hard, and he wore his little uniform every day. And every morning I would pull him out of bed, and he was on the top bunks, like you said, I have 3 boys. And so he was on the top being the oldest, and I had to climb up and wake him up and cajole him out of bed. And he was so warm and cozy, and it just made me really, really sad. And every day when I sent him to school, I would cry. It never went away. It just did not stop. It wasn't something where on Christmas break I was excited for school to start again. It was crying all the time. I was very upset about it. So finally, my husband just had a change of heart. I don't even remember something happening where he was like, okay. He just had a change of heart. And I said, okay, well, this is the right thing to do. It's time right now, the middle of first grade. And I said, if this is the right thing, then why would we wait? If it's the right thing, it's the right thing now. It's not the right thing in 4 months. It's not the right thing at the end of the school year. And we had already paid for tuition through the end of the school year. And it was we're going to lose this money. And I said, well, right or wrong, it's the right thing to do. So let's jump. So we left, and they kind of thought I was a little bit crazy, but they were kind. And like I said, it was nothing wrong with the school or the education. It wasn't a situation like that. Nobody was being mean to him. A lot of my families, they're pulling up because of bullying and stressful situations. It wasn't like that. It was just, it killed me to every day send him away for his best hours, and to miss the light bulb moments when he would get learning. And he was tired when he came home, and he was cranky when he came home, and he didn't want to learn with me all over again and do all the things. And I wanted to be the one to be with him all day and to raise him. And I'm a Christian. I wanted to disciple him myself, and I wanted to be able to speak with him all day long. And so that was it. And he is the one that just graduated in May. So that was when he was in, halfway through first grade. So
a long time,
11, 12 years.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. We could do the math, but it's been a while. And then I have 2 others, and they haven't gone to school in a full-time capacity ever. They've always been homeschooled from the beginning. And I love being with my kids. I love being there all day long. I like talking through all the things and hearing their thoughts and teaching them, and maybe just facilitating learning and getting them what they need. I love homeschooling. I'm very passionate about it.
Very cool. What do you follow a specific philosophy, or you tend to be more eclectic?
I'm definitely eclectic.
Are you?
Yeah. And I think the people who are on my team at Statheros, we've had this conversation. I think people start out in one way, but it's rare that they finish out any other way than eclectic. I think that most homeschoolers, when they're in it for the long haul, they always just end up being eclectic.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think with the classical people,
not classical,
classical people, they're pretty
They're diehard.
Die hard. Yeah.
It's the
That's right.
diehard classical and the diehard Charlotte Mason, and they'll be all the way through, right? But there's a lot of people that'll dabble in Charlotte Mason.
Mhm.
Like I integrated a lot of Charlotte Mason into my homeschool throughout the years. It's a little bit different now that mine are in high school. You know, high school is kind of a different beast where you're checking different boxes, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to go with the curriculum. But yeah, classical definitely diehard.
It was funny. I was on a panel for homeschooling, and they had gotten everyone that was on the panel was classical, and then there was me, an eclectic unschooler. So that was lovely. It was a lovely conversation. It was kind of funny. Okay, so you start homeschooling, and then what shifted for you to start an umbrella school? Talk through that
Okay.
whole process.
So like I said, I'm a Christian, and I was in a Christian umbrella school, but my family doesn't look like other people's. My husband has different beliefs, and so we're mixed in that way. And I just could not fit in to the all Christian homeschool umbrella school environment. I didn't match. I didn't fit. I am a t-shirt and jeans girl. I am not a skirts, and I'm okay with long hair, but it's in a messy bun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of a wild card. I'm a wild card. That's all I can say. So I didn't like the way that it felt to always feel like an outsider. And it hurt me. Like, it hurt me to go through experiences trying to connect with people and then not being able to connect because my family didn't look like theirs, or because my husband wasn't present in the same way as other people's families were the husbands and other people's families were present. And I didn't adhere to the same homeschooling methods. You know what I mean? It was just, I just didn't fit, and I didn't want anybody else to feel that way. And I just wanted to create a space where people could feel welcome no matter what their worldview, their political view, their religious view, whatever it is. I don't care. It's about homeschooling. And I never wanted another mom to feel that way.
Yeah.
But I don't want anybody to feel like they're homeschooling alone. Like, one of my taglines on the business has been never homeschool alone, right? Like, don't do it alone. Whatever you have to do, find the people that you can connect with, whether it's obviously in person is ideal because we need relationship. Our kids need relationships. Our kid needs friendship. And even if it's scary for us, like, I'm a very introverted person. I'm very, very private. I'm very introverted. But I would still put myself out there, and I encourage other people to, because our kids need to, and our kids need to be brave, and they need to see us doing it and stepping outside of that. And so I wanted to create a space where anybody who wanted homeschool support would be welcome to get homeschool support, where they didn't have to adhere to a statement of faith to be able to get that support, or to feel welcome, or to feel seen, or to be accepted. And so that's why I created the space that I created. And I also love to help homeschool moms, whether they're very just getting started, thinking about homeschooling, learning about it, or they're veterans and they've graduated their kids, and now what? And so I love to bring on women that have gone through the journey, that have all of the wisdom, because they've worked hard, right? They're experts. When you think about how long it takes for anybody to get a master's or doctor, become an expert in a field, right? It's like 40,000 hours, I think. Is it? I don't quote me on that. For
10,000 hours. Yeah.
Is it only 10,000? Okay. So when I think about how much time these veteran homeschool moms have given, learned to their kids going through this, I wanted to give them a space to be able to pass on their knowledge. I very much believe in learning from people who have gone before us and giving a space to that. And so I created a team. It's not just me at Statheros. I have, they used to be called mentor moms, and now we call them homeschool coaches, because we cheer people on. And I think a lot of times we believe in people more than they even believe in themselves. And so we have a team of homeschool coaches who have all graduated kids successfully, who are doing the things that they wanted to do, that they dreamt about doing when they grew up, and who are doing very well. And so we have that as part of the umbrella school, where people can work one-on-one with one of the homeschool coaches that can put back into the community. And then it's a big deal to me to support everybody in whatever capacity that I can, in whatever way I can reach them through the opportunities, whether it's through the umbrella school to work with a coach for the products and the services that we provide. We provide a lot of services through our umbrella school.
So talk a little bit about, because the term umbrella school might be unfamiliar to some of the listeners, but
Sure.
can you describe what an umbrella school is a little bit so that the listeners know?
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about it in context of Colorado state law because that's where we're based.
Okay.
It could vary a tiny bit based on the state that people are in and internationally, just because everybody has their own local homeschool laws. So I'm going to explain the way it works in Colorado specifically.
Perfect.
And then it's going to be similar to that in other states. And then internationally, it's another ballgame that we can talk about if you want to talk about that internationally and what that looks like. And that's where the umbrella schools come in. Umbrella schools are legally called independent schools. We operate under independent school law. And so we have more autonomy as far as the policies that we set regarding privacy, assessments, the standardized test, reporting, the information that we collect, all those things. I like to explain it. An umbrella school is kind of like a VPN, like a virtual private network that you would use on your computer. So like on your computer, on your cell phone, you might have a VPN so that it stays private and it's blocked. So it's the umbrella, you register with an umbrella, you enroll with the umbrella school, and we're that covering, and that information does not go to the state. It's private with us. So instead of them sending that information to the school district where the state then has that information through the school district, you're enrolled with a private school and enrollment is completely private. We don't share that or disclose that information. So we also provide different services. A school district, for example, if you call them, if you file a notice of intent and call the school district and say, hey, I have a question about homeschooling, they're going to say, we can't help you. Here's the state website on homeschooling. Whereas with the umbrella school, you have people there who are mostly there. I've never heard of an umbrella school that's not run by homeschoolers. I have heard of umbrella schools being run by very new homeschoolers. So that might be something that you want to check and see, like, what's your experience with the umbrella school before you enroll, to make sure that they're credible, they have a long time history, and they understand not just how the umbrella school works, but to be able to answer your questions, right? You want somebody who can answer your questions and support you. We have a different option for the assessments. We also do assessments on an every other year basis, also starting for kids in third grade. If they have special needs and they're not at a grade level like that, it's like when they're about 8 years old. So parents can do either a standardized test, and you get everything that comes with that. You can do a professional evaluation, and we have a professional evaluator. Kim is our professional evaluator that you had on your podcast. She's the one who does our professional evaluations. Or we give people the option for a parent evaluation where they can go through and they can do an assessment of their school year for each student, how well they're doing in each subject. That we look at each subject, the strength and the weakness. Where are they doing well? How can I help them? What are some goals for next year? Now, where are they strong? What are their strongest strengths? How can we really help them exceed? We look at character development, spiritual development, if that applies to a family. If it doesn't, it's fine. And we go through a whole child. It's very holistic, a whole child approach on how this is doing, because we're raising adults. We're not just checking a box. In my mind, I feel passionate that we're not just checking a box to make sure that they got a certain score on a test. We're raising adult humans that we want to be mentally sound, emotionally sound, spiritually sound, academically sound, that can go and succeed in life and be completely comfortable in the skin that they have to be able to fulfill what they were created to be. And the best way to do that is to support them in the entirety. And so that's my philosophy really on education and then how we support our kids. So the umbrella school provides that foundation of support. It provides the legal covering. You get an enrollment letter saying, I'm enrolled with this umbrella school. If anybody were ever to say, how are you homeschooling? This is how I'm homeschooling. Teacher IDs, they can provide those too. We issue teacher IDs for anybody who wants them. And then everything stays private. We're not disclosing it and sharing that information with anybody.
So do all of the state, and maybe you can answer this, or I don't know if you know this, do all of the states have some sort of an umbrella school law within their homeschooling laws?
No, not all states have the umbrella option. Only some states do. Like some require that you file an affidavit with a local superintendent. It's a really nice option that we have in Colorado. to be able to have this extra support. No, not every state. I can't tell you off the top of my head how many states have umbrella school options. And in some states, like anybody can enroll with us. You don't have to be in Colorado. The support just looks different. We don't fulfill legal reporting requirements. So we can help people figure out what their legal reporting requirements are to make sure that they're homeschooling legally in their state. And then they still get all the other support and benefits that come with enrollment with us.
Very cool.
There are umbrella schools that will cover anybody anywhere. But if an umbrella school ever says, yeah, we got you covered, you can enroll with us, you need to make sure that that's actually fulfilling legal reporting requirements within your state. So for example, in Colorado, you have to be, if for an umbrella school to be a legitimate umbrella school in Colorado that is recognized, they have to be registered as a private business through Colorado Secretary of State. So if people are investigating and wanting to know, they can go to Colorado Business Entity Lookup on the Secretary of State website and do a search for that school name. And if it's there, you'll see it. Okay, they're legitimate. If they're not there, don't enroll with that umbrella school because it won't cover you. Yeah.
Okay, so then how does that look internationally? Because I have had some international, specifically one, Annalise here looking at you, wonder about if you're living internationally or you're an American, you're living internationally, and they require that you're registered with an umbrella school. What does that look like?
Sure.
Like in the case of a Colorado specific umbrella school.
Sure. So they can be enrolled with an umbrella school, but they still need to follow any homeschool laws that apply locally where they live. The thing about it is, especially in South America, there really aren't any homeschool laws. And this is the case in some countries too, where there's no law saying that you can do it, but there's also no law saying that you can't do it. Like in Germany, they say you're not allowed to homeschool, right? It's illegal to homeschool in Germany. In other countries, it doesn't say yes, it doesn't say no. There's some ambiguity there. So there are a lot of homeschoolers. But then in the local authorities where they are will say you need to be enrolled with an international school. And so that's where it comes in that they can enroll with an umbrella school in the United States. We provide a letter of enrollment saying, yes, they're enrolled. We're here to support them. They still have to do the assessments every other year. That way we can see that students are making progress. It's not just a hole where nobody knows what's going on and there's no accountability. There's still measures of accountability that they're abiding by. And as long as they're going along with the requirements of the umbrella school and can retain their enrollment, if the umbrella school accepts international students, that is, then that is sufficient. So they just have to make sure that it's an umbrella school that accepts international students, but they have to make sure that if there are homeschool laws where they live, that they are abiding by those laws. Whether that means if they have to check in with local authorities, like in the states, like I said, some states you have to file an affidavit with the superintendent. Some states you have to file a letter, like the homeschooling law in Colorado is file the notice of intent. Sometimes you have to fill out a form on the state website. Like in Kansas, you have to go onto the state website and you just fill out one form registering your homeschool. You're registering as, what do they call it? A private non-accredited school. So that's one example. Some states have no reporting at all, like Texas, no reporting. In Texas, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to tell anybody you're homeschooling. You don't have to submit any tests to anybody. It's free game there. Same thing with Oklahoma and Idaho. But in those non-reporting states, you still have to look at what the state law says because they often will have required subjects that you have to teach. So even though you don't have to tell anybody that you're homeschooling, you still need to make sure that you're following the required number of days per year to homeschool, the required number of hours, required subjects, and then housing any records that the school is requiring. So it's the same thing internationally. Look at your laws locally. And if they say you have to teach any subjects, teach those. If they say you have to do a certain number of days, meet that requirement for the days. If they say you have to do assessments at a certain time, do those. Regardless of where you're homeschooling, you should keep records. Keep your records. It doesn't have to be every single one, but keep a sampling of work from the beginning of the year to the end of the year in each subject to show how your student is progressing, and then put them in a file. We recommend keeping those for 7 years, just like your taxes.
So with an umbrella school, however, who do the parents continue to keep records, or is that something umbrella schools will do, or does that depend on the umbrella school?
It does depend on the umbrella school. We all have autonomy to set our own policies, but regardless, everybody should be keeping their own attendance. So some umbrella schools require the parents to turn in their attendance on certain intervals at a regular time at the beginning of the year. Some might do, tell us what you anticipate doing this year. Some might say, tell us what you're doing at the end of the year. That varies from umbrella school to umbrella school. But the most important thing that you need to do is always keep your attendance and always keep your test scores. The umbrella schools can act as a repository. Like we have a record repository where we house those things for you. And for all of our members, we do retain those records for them. So it just depends on what services your umbrella school provides and how you utilize those. We both provide that for all of our people who are enrolled, and then people who are not enrolled who just want us to house records. We do have a repository option for people who want to house records with us so they know that it's stored, but then they don't have to keep track of it themselves.
Nice. Now, what about transcripts? Let's talk about transcripts for a little bit. Is that something that y'all do? And what does that look like? What would you recommend for parents that are needing transcripts or need to create transcripts?
Okay. Well, specifically, you don't have to worry about transcripts until high school. So if you're in elementary school, you don't need to be thinking about transcripts. If you're in middle school, you don't need to think about transcripts. It's high school is when transcripts are important. So for transcripts, we have a lot of information on our website about transcripts, and we do have an official transcript service that we provide. A transcript needs to have specific information, parent name, and to edit this out, you might want to have Stacy, our high school specialist, on your podcast because she is the one who handles all of our transcripts, and she also does college prep and college admissions. So
that'd be awesome.
If you ever want to talk to her, she'd be a good one to talk to.
I'd love to have her on because I do get questions about that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So transcripts.
And uncut. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah. So where did I leave off? So you want to have specific information, parent name, the supervisor instruction, student's name, date of birth, gender, not social security number. Do not put the kid's social on the transcript. You need to have it broken down by school year. So freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. You need to have course names. You need to give a title to each course, the grade issued, attendance, days completed for attendance. The colleges want to see that. What else? GPA. We have GPA on the transcripts. I could pull one up and we could just go through every section, but it would take a long time. We could do a whole podcast on transcripts.
And we might very well do that. So
then you need to keep course descriptions. You want to have the course descriptions on hand. So for your course descriptions, you need to have a documentation of what you did for each course. So that would cover curriculum if you used it, activities, how they learned if you didn't use a curriculum, things that they did if they wrote papers, if they, whatever that is. You want to be able to explain that in the course description. You're not going to share that course description with anybody unless they ask for more information. Like if your student was to apply to a college and they said, can you tell us more about this? What was covered in this course? At that point, you need to be able to provide that right away because they're in a college application process at that point and things are moving quickly, right? You don't want to scramble and say, oh, wait, let me go back and try to figure this out. Let me type it up. Now I need to edit it. When you make the transcript, you want to have a separate document with all the course descriptions for all that information. And then on the transcript, you need to have both a cumulative GPA and each individual semester GPA. So we have a template. We have a DIY template for people who like to DIY things and do it themselves, and it has all the information. But then we also have the full service where you submit the information to us and then we compile it, we sign off on it, all those things.
Very nice. Now, as far as like with your oldest, well, before we talk about your oldest a little bit, let's talk about, because one of the things that you said at the beginning, and I found this to be true myself, is that homeschooling high school is different than homeschooling elementary. Let's talk about a little bit about what shifted for you and what homeschooling high school has looked like for you.
It is very different than elementary school because we had a lot of fun in elementary school and we did unschooling in elementary school too. And it depends on the kid, to be honest with you. Like my older son, totally different than my middle son, and my middle son, completely different from my youngest son. And so I'm really big on saying you need to switch it up for each kid. The biggest thing that I can tell you is that you want to start with the end in mind. So when you get into high school, and you don't always know, that's a little easier said than done. But as a mom or as a dad, if your dad who's homeschooling, there are dads who homeschool, you know your kid, right? You know what they're naturally gifted at. You know what their natural interests are. You can have a pretty good gauge on your kid. Do I think that they're going to go to college? Do I think they're going to want to go to a rigorous college? Are we talking like Ivy League? Do they want to get in something like that? Are they in a sport? Do they want to play competitively? You know, is this kid like a total math whiz and they love math and they're going to want to go into engineering or something with accounting or anything, like you name it, right? Like, you know, your kids' interests. And so it's our job as parents looking down, you know, the road, like 3, 4 years, 5 years. Some people start thinking about this in 7th, 8th grade. What do I need to prepare them for? Because college admissions is one thing. But then if they want to go to a rigorous college, well, that's a whole nother thing, right? Like, you want to make sure that you are taking into account any possibility for what you think they want to do, and then giving them every opportunity to reach that higher goal, so that if that's not what they want to do, they've already covered all their bases and it's a shoo-in, right? Like, you don't want to underestimate or set them up for underperformance for what they're doing. So you look at, okay, if I think that they're going to go to a college, what kind of a college do I think they're going to go to? Okay, so let's get an average on that and look at what that's going to require. So there are different brackets of what's required for credits for a high school to graduate. Like, there's so many just to graduate. And then there's more if they want to go into like a state college. And then there's more if they want to go into a highly competitive college, if they want to go to like a military institution, or if they want to go to an Ivy League. That's different. So obviously on the more rigorous, more competitive, they're going to have more credits that they need to get. They need to get more foreign language. They need to have 4 years of math versus 3 years of math. You know, it changes. Mm-hmm. Are they going to go into a trade? What kind of trades would they like to go into? Now, okay, let's say I have a kid who wants to be a mechanic. Okay, then I need to get him exposed to things that are going to support him in that field, in that industry. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So high school, the best thing that I can say, if I had to just sum it up, it's being really in tune with your kids and what they're likely to be interested in and going for after they graduate, and then setting them up for success for those goals, and then making sure that you're getting the things done that they need to do. For sports, if your kids are into sports and they're highly competitive and they want to play it in the college level, you need to look at the NCAA's website, because it starts in their freshman year for things that you need to be doing to be able to have them compete at the college level. So it's looking down the road. It's taking into account the reality of your student, their strengths and their weaknesses. Again, that whole child, and seeing how can I support them for what they want to achieve while getting them a good education so that they can be a contributing member of society, and they can be well-functioning adults who can take care of themselves, who can take care of their bodies, who can understand what they need, who can process information, who know how to critically think. I think writing and be able to do research papers and writing is huge, because that's language development, it's communication and being able to find information. That's a big thing that all high schoolers should have. And the math and the ordered thinking that math brings is critical to success. And then from there, it's a matter of figuring out how many credits they need to graduate, to go to college, to go to their trade school, to go to a highly rigorous, whatever that is.
I love it.
And did I just create more questions, like a whole world of questions on that one?
Yeah, but that would be like 5 podcasts. So.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, okay, so like with you, what did you find was the biggest challenge, especially with your oldest who just graduated? What was your biggest challenge, especially that first time because that's what I'm going through right this second is, okay, I've got my 17 turning 18 here in a month, and okay, we're about to put him out in the world, and he's very opinionated. But what were your biggest challenges with that, especially that first one?
I think my biggest challenges, gosh, that's such a loaded question. There's so many things I could tell you with that. And there's so much I mean, each family is so unique. I think the biggest thing is allowing them to discover who they are and to do the hard things and let them to maybe make some bad decisions and even fail without trying to help and rescue, and let them go through what they need to go through to become who they are going to be as an adult. The growing up part, the growing up, right? I think that's the hardest part. My 17-year-old right now, I keep telling myself, like, just back off. He's grown into his man skin. Like, he's just let him be. Like, he doesn't need his mom to micromanage. I think micromanaging maybe is one of the biggest things. Like, no, you need to do this. You got to get this done. You got to get this done. And just saying, okay, do your thing. And I'm going to circle back with you later. And if it didn't work, then we're going to have to readjust. And then sticking back and holding myself back and saying, okay, let's see how it goes. And then not interjecting. Like, that's hard. And even I'm going through that with my youngest too. It's a high school thing, right? Like, it's not even just my oldest. It's all of them. Sometimes they don't do things when I think they should, and I have to be quiet. Sometimes they don't do things the way I want them to do things, and I just have to be quiet and allow them the space and the girth to figure it out. I think that's the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, it's funny. With my because this child is child number 3, but he's my first homeschool child.
Right.
That's graduating.
Yeah.
And he's so it's so funny because he's so opinionated and he shouldn't always be so opinionated. Sometimes my husband and I are like, no, just stop. Like,
Yeah.
you don't sound that smart when you but now my 23-year-old son, who we had such a hard time his, sophomore, junior, senior year. And now he's like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for all of the things, because now I'm watching it, with him having his opinions, and I was that way. And now I'm like, I was so dumb, which is so fun to have him be like, I'm so sorry, parents, so.
Well, that's something that's new for you. This is new for you because you're getting all of the opinions and you're experiencing it real time. Whereas before they were at school, you might not have gotten to enjoy that all day long. Right. And so now it probably seems a little more intense just because you're experiencing it all the time, but it's probably it'll pan out the exact same way. My oldest has even done that. He's come back and has said, wow, like, now I see it. Okay, Mom,
I get it.
Like, I get it. Okay, now I understand. And he's only 19. So, but like, it'll come, it'll happen. But I think, sometimes I think that homeschool kids are different than other kids in the world. And I think, I'm gonna be very careful how I say this. I think sometimes homeschool kids, because a lot of them enjoy learning and they are passionate about their studies and they can get passionate about their opinions. Not that public school kids don't get passionate about their opinions. I'm not saying that. But I think homeschoolers have a special kind of passion about what they've invested time in studying, because they can, like, at least in my house, they can go on for hours studying the things that interest them. You know what I mean? And so sometimes I feel like maybe there can be an extra level of assurity that maybe is a little misplaced. You know what I mean?
I think, well, and I think that's where we are. But I think you're right. As far as, I watched my child number 3 and 4, who were our oldest that homeschooled. And one's turning 18, one's turning 17. And I watched them go from being very apathetic about what they were studying about. I mean, they got great grades. Don't get me wrong. Like, my 17-year-old, brilliant. He got A's in everything, and he didn't have to study ever. And same with when he did concurrent enrollment, didn't have to study, still made the president's list. And I watched them go from being very apathetic about what they were learning about to becoming very passionate and opinionated
Mhm.
about their education, about what they think. And in some ways, I feel like I told my son this the other day. I said, I feel like I've created a monster, but yet at the same time, he has to become he has to become a monster is a terrible term to use, but he has to grow into adulthood
Right.
and have opinions and be able to articulate what he thinks and why he thinks it, because I'm not going to always be around, so
Well, and
it's
we
been
want
interesting.
that. If we're honest, we want that for our kids,
Yeah.
especially boys. Like,
Hmm.
we want to have strong men in our society who are bold enough and brave enough to stand up and do the right thing and stand up for right.
Hmm.
I mean, that is something that we want. Well, of course, I'm not minimizing females doing that too, but everybody's always saying, where are the strong men? Where are the
Yeah.
good husbands, right? Where are the men? Where are the guys that college girls? Where are the respectable guys I want to date? We want to have these kinds of men, and it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just go from being a teenage boy to then all of a sudden being a well-spoken, well-thought, critical thinking adult. It's the learning, it's the growing process, right? Sometimes it's uncomfortable, it's the growing pains, and it's tough, but that's what happens when you're having kids with fiery spirits who are going to go do big things. I think that you should be worried if they're not.
Yeah,
If they're
that's true.
not strong in their opinions and they're not strong in their learning and they're not passionate about their learning, that's where you want to say, "Oh, how can I step in and help this kid a little bit more?" Because the end result is what we're going for.
Yeah.
Those adults that we're talking about raising. And unfortunately, sometimes it's a really uncomfortable process to get there.
Yes,
But
it
I
is.
think it's great to do it in our homes where they can be met with grace and love and compassion and forgiveness when needed. Like, my husband,
Mhm.
sometimes he'll like get upset sometimes at some of the things that my kids say. And I tell him, like, hey, like, hang on a second. Like, this is our safe place. Like,
Mhm.
this is where we have to be free and safe to hash out our ideas and express our thoughts and process things out loud so that they can develop their critical thinking. They have to be able to make mistakes and go too far
Mhm.
sometimes here, where we can redirect them and give them compassionate feedback or frustrated feedback sometimes, because it's not always kind and love. Someone's like, what are you talking about? Like, that, if we're real, it can be frustrating. It's hard. Growing pains are real. It's not always easy, and sometimes it hurts and sometimes it's frustrating.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point that when they're in our home, that is the time and the place for them to do the learning and the growing. And they're going to continue to learn and grow,
Yeah.
but they won't be thrown into society without having a backbone or opinions. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. And then when they get there and they're challenged and they need to rethink things, go through things, they can come back to you and have those
mhm,
conversations, now not as a parent-child relationship, but as more of a peer-to-peer relationship, because
mhm.
that's what we want for our adult kids, right? We want our
Yeah,
adult
it's
kids
true.
to be friends with us. There's a point, you don't want to do it too early, because then you can really harm things in your relationship and your kids' future. But there is a point when they're old enough and mature enough where it's no longer parent directing to child, it's child talking to parent, parent asking questions to help them grow, and
Mhm.
then child asking for feedback to help make decisions. And it's all that, it's a stair-stepped growing process that we eventually
Yeah.
get to, right, to help them, so that when they're in a place of work or they're in college or they're somewhere and they're having difficult conversations with people or relationships with people, they can come back and say, hey, like, this is what I'm struggling with, and you can continue to support them in that as they get older. It never ends, like, even
It's
when
true.
they're adult. And I mean, I know a lot of people
It's
who
true.
still call their mom and want to talk to their mom, and they're in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I still call and talk to my mom,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, and I think that that's been something for me, having boys in my 20s now. Well, I'm not in my 20s. They're in their 20s.
Right.
But I've loved, especially my 23-year-old and I were talking the other day, and he was sharing with me, he loves the author Robert Greene, and he was like, "Mom, it's actually really fun to talk to you now." as opposed to when I was younger, because I feel like I can, like, I'm talking to you as an adult and it's so fun. And it was, and I love talking to him and bouncing these ideas, and, and having him share all these beautiful things he's learning. And, I love that. I love that piece. And I love how you say, well, yeah, it becomes more of a peer-to-peer relationship, because it's exactly what happens. I think one thing that surprised me about homeschooling was watching whereas my older two kids were peer oriented. And for those that are listening, I'm using the terminology of Dr. Gordon Neufeld, who's an attachment psychologist who wrote Hold On to Your Kids. But watching them go from be very peer oriented, to my other kids starting peer oriented as they were going through school, and then becoming more parent oriented, where they see me as a resource. They see me as the authority, not just an annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
And that relationship shift, I think that's the biggest thing. And I've seen that over and over and over and over again with homeschool kids, where there's a different relationship with the child than most public schoolers. It's not all public schoolers, but there's more, I don't know, a more connectedness and relationship. And maybe that's not all homeschoolers, but that's something that I found very beautiful about the homeschooling community, is like, wow, these parents have these beautiful relationships with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going into adulthood, and they still want to talk to their parents, and they still, anyway.
Yeah. When I first started homeschooling, I heard somebody say, and she'd been homeschooling for a really long time, you don't have to have tense relationships with your kids when they're teenagers.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be that way. Society tends to think that once kids become teenagers, they're rebellious. They don't get along. They don't want to talk to you. They want you out of their life. They don't want your input. They don't want to share with you. So it doesn't have to be that way. And I was like, okay, I'm noting that, because I did not experience that with my parents when I was in high school. It was very much standoffish and separate, and I was rebellious. And I knew I didn't want that for my kids. And so when I heard this woman say that, I was like, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, I mean, it really took me back, and I really had to stop and think. Like, I had just expected, because that's what society tells us, that you're not going to have a good relationship with your teenagers. And when they're teenagers, they're not going to like you, and you're not going to like them. And that's how it's going to be. And I am here to tell you, it is a fact. You can have a great relationship with your teenagers. You can want to spend time with them, and they will want to spend time with you. And there is a way to do this. And I think that homeschooling is the primary way of doing it. When you have that, instead of peer oriented, it's family oriented, and we're all on the same team, and we're living life together, and we're supporting each other, and we're going through our ups and our downs, and we see each other at our best and our worst, and we have compassion for each other. We learn how to support each other. And a lot of time it has nothing to do with, academic education, but it's, again, whole person. Everybody's on the team family, whatever your last name is, put in there, team last name, and you're all on that team, and everybody is there for each other.
I love that. Okay. My last question for you, I'm going to get to, but before I get to the last question, you mentioned something about, and this is prior to recording. You mentioned something about conferences, and that you do conferences every year. Share a little bit about that.
Well, we did. We haven't done one this year. We're changing. We might do in-person events again in the future, but I don't know. We're changing a lot of what we do to be on-demand, real-time support, so that when people need something, they don't have to wait for a conference to get it. They can get it now, because moms need help at 2 a.m. My deepest desire is to help moms who are awake at night, losing sleep because they're scared they miss something, or they don't know what to do. And so I want to be a resource for moms who, they know the website to go through, they know the podcast to go to, they know the Facebook group, our private Facebook group. You don't have to be enrolled with our umbrella school to be in our private Facebook group. We have that open for support for anybody who wants to be a part of it. I want moms to know at 2 a.m. I am not alone, and I have a reliable resource that I can count on to be there for me. So we might still do in-person events in the future. We have some that we've discussed, and we have some that are, hanging on, but right now we don't have anything scheduled, but that's not to say that we won't.
Gotcha. What conferences or conventions would you recommend that you've liked in the past, other than your own?
I love great homeschool conventions.
Do you?
I've
never been to a great homeschool.
That is what I would recommend, hands down, across the board, without a doubt. And those, I've been to other conferences, and I have left very discouraged from some homeschool conferences, walking out feeling like, I can't do this. I'm not enough. I'm not doing it right. I should be doing more. Do it like this person, do it their way, their method, square peg, round hole, But great homeschool conventions. When I went to my first convention, I think that one I went to, they have one in St. Louis that I went to a couple times. They have one in Dallas, Florida. I can't even remember. They have them all over the country. I want to say there's like 5 to 7 of them maybe that they have. I went to the one in St. Louis, and it was the first time that I walked out, and I was standing taller, and I was encouraged, and I felt like I could breathe easier. And I was like, I have not made a mistake by homeschooling my children. I am excited about homeschooling. I can do this. I walked out feeling empowered and equipped, which are my 2 big things. What I always tell people, what is on every single thing that I do: equip, empower, and encourage homeschoolers. That is what I want to do. And so when I went to great homeschool conventions, I felt like it checked all 3 of those boxes: equip, empower, and encourage. I walked out feeling good about that.
I love that. Thank you. Okay. What advice would you give to these new families that are new to homeschooling or thinking about leaving the system and start homeschooling? What would you tell them?
You are more free than you realize you are. You're stronger than you think you are. You're smarter than you think you are. And you can absolutely do it as long as you're willing to learn and you're willing to do hard things. People don't understand how much freedom they actually have and how capable they are. If you are a parent and you are thinking about homeschooling your kid, or you have already made the jump to homeschool your kid, it tells me that you are in tune with your child. You're looking at their needs. You have an emotional connection with your child where you can see and feel what they're going through. You have to trust your mama's gut. Your mama gut will never, ever, ever lead you astray. As long as you're willing to read and learn, there's nothing that you can't do for your kids in homeschooling. And it might not be something you do yourself. It might be researching something to learn how to connect them with the things that they need. And that's why I'm saying you can't do it all yourself. You'll never be able to do it all yourself, and you'll fail your kids if you think you can do it all yourself. You can't. It's a matter of learning how to do it, how to find the resources you need, how to connect with the resources that you need, being humble enough to ask for help when you need it. Don't try to go alone. Reach out and tap into the people with experience who have done this before you, because homeschoolers are an amazing group of people. The community is so generous and so kind, and they want to share and they want to encourage and they want to help. You can do it. You can absolutely do it.
I love that. Colleen, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're so busy. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. For those interested in learning more about Statheros Academy, I will put all the links that we've talked about in the show notes so that you can access all of those, as well as the Great Homeschool Convention links. Colleen, thank you again so much. Mamas and papas, grandmas and grandpas, you are doing so much better than you think you are. You got this. We'll talk next week. If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool, or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.